Okay.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, let me pop in over here. Bless everybody. Mervin, we're starting. Sorry. All right. Greetings, everybody. I give thanks. I'm glad to be able to be here and create this opportunity. So first off, like we always do, I want to start by just giving thanks to life. I want to give thanks to God, our creator, and our ancestor creating this opportunity for us to be able to come together, be educated, empowered, and also just create something for dialogue where we'll leave here, the objective is to leave here with clarity. Hotep, amen, and ashe. I'm Farrah Hyman Freeman, founder and director of the OFC. For those who don't know, we are the One Full Circle Melanated Community Resource Hub and Network. And actually now we're in the process of developing and becoming the next super hub here in Canada, so we're a national super hub. So we're excited for that. And I'm excited to introduce, for those who do not know, this is Ryan Knight. He is one of the founders and the director at the Afro-Canadian Business Network, so that's Acbn. And so he is here to educate us. Well, anyways, I'll let him introduce himself in terms of what he does, what his organization is all about. And basically, brother, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. All right. And one thing, typically, when I go through the presentation, I go fast. So today I will be going pretty slow over the important parts. About Acbn, I'll probably go a bit quicker through that, but really quick, just let me make sure I can get to the next slide. Yes, so a little bit about myself and Acbn. So my name is Ryan Knight. I'm one of the co-founders, and we started Acbn 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, because we were seeing a gap in the support that were for Black entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I run a company called Detail Ignites. So we provide mobile waterless car cleaning. And what I'm most proud of is our youth entrepreneurship program. So we work with students that have, they're in high school, college, even those out of school, some coming out of detention, to teach them how to start their own business by running a mini version of our company. So as students were graduating our program, a lot of them weren't getting the support that they needed to continue their entrepreneurship journey. And even for myself, we were looking to expand and franchise across Canada and into the US. There weren't a lot of Black focused business organizations that had the mandate to scale up businesses. So we brought 6 other entrepreneurs together, said, could we create this entity that would sit down with an entrepreneur, figure out what stage they're in, and then help them create a strategy to grow their companies. And thus Acbn was born. The past 5 years, we have engaged with over 5,000 Black entrepreneurs. We're seeing that about 25% of them are product-based. We've noticed about 71% are female entrepreneurs, and in the database, about 91% are the business founders and the CEOs. What we're most proud of is being able to partner with other Black-focused business organizations. So now we're part of the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem that was funded through the federal government, partnered with over 40 organizations, expanding our reach to over 30,000 Black entrepreneurs. And of course, I always like to just show some of the partners that we already work with. Of course, One Full Circle, which I feel is the mirror of us in Quebec, and we're trying to really solidify that partnership so that we can work in tandem more often. The Toronto Community Benefits Network, Rosemary Powell's been a great supporter of what we do. ZSC is our business advisory partner that helps with sitting down with entrepreneurs to make sure that they get the support that they need. Alterna Savings, who I'm going to talk a bit more about, a financial partner that's helped us put together some of our funding programs. SETC, the social economy through social inclusion, making sure that information that I'm going to share today is really due to the fact that the work Brother Victor does with SETC to bridge the gap between government information about funding so that we can get the information and then again share it. EDGE is through Sheridan College, their entrepreneurship discovery and growth engine. So we partner with them to make sure, again, to bridge the free resources that the college has to our community. Dream Legacy Foundation that works more so with Black tech founders. They're also the lead on the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, which is, you're familiar, they've done sessions for OFC already. And Calabash, something that they are a cooperative of expert service providers in the community, so that when we do get funding, we're able to circulate the dollars, spend it with service providers that are from our community, Calabash has been able to put together a directory and a list of these service providers, but in a cooperative form. So everybody becomes a member and we're able to work together. Really quickly, the pillars of Acbn, I do believe entrepreneurship is the core, the foundation, I would say, being able to use that as a tool to empower our community and really look at how we can start our own businesses, own more, and then build generational wealth. I feel entrepreneurship is one of the best tools to do that, and it creates economic inclusion. But the key piece that we started to focus on is that access to funding, because we're seeing one of the biggest barriers that Black entrepreneurs are facing. And recently we were able to do the first rapid the Black labor market assessment in Canada, the first ever. And we focused it on Southern Ontario. We did focus it on Southern Ontario, and really we found through that research, there's 4 strikes that Black entrepreneurs are facing. The main one, the data is showing 86% of entrepreneurs have between 1 to 4 employees. So when we're going to the bank for capital, they're treating us with the same brush as a company that has 40 employees, because in Canada, small businesses range from 1 to 49 employees. So when you come into the bank and only have, let's say, 2 or 3 employees, they deem you as higher risk. We're also seeing that the Black businesses that we spoke with, and we were able to interview almost 1,600. And when we did focus groups with people that were unemployed, over 50% actually didn't want to work at Black firms. So this is difficult where we're already small, and when we're ready to hire, now there's a perception out there, whatever. And the feedback that we got is they feel Black businesses might not pay on time. They don't have employee perks or employee benefits. So these are things that goes beyond the business plan and just helping an entrepreneur with a webinar. We actually have to make it aspirational for people to want to work there. So starting to include things like employee benefits and making sure that their operations and infrastructure is on point is what Acbn needs to lean into. One other strike that we noticed is a lot of entrepreneurs were concentrated in the professional services. So about 25% of those that we surveyed are in professional services, it's either accountants, lawyers, consultants, and we're not engaging with high growth industries. So biotech, clean tech, construction, where billions of dollars are being invested, we are not engaging in those industries as much as we could be. And then you layer on the 4th strike, where we're dealing with systemic barriers that the federal government has agreed exist, and the banking sector has agreed exist, which is the whole reason that they created the Black Entrepreneurship Program, which has the 3 tiers, the loan, the ecosystem, and the knowledge hub. So all that was created because they did agree that there is systemic racism that is blocking Black entrepreneurs from getting capital. All right, so quickly, this is a reason when they created the Black Entrepreneurship Program, the funding started at $25,000 and went to $250,000. We were able to work with Alternative Savings to fill that gap. So we can do loans between $1,000 up to $25,000. And to date, we've dispersed just over $240,000, and we are actively raising an additional $2 million. But that's aside, that is just, we're showing this as an example of things that we can build internally to support our businesses instead of relying on other government programs. So I wanted to slow down and show a bit of the history of Acbn and the different types of funding that we've been able to acquire. It's ranged from as low as $500, and you'll see as high as 1.3 million. Also, it's ranged from pitch competitions to grants from the city, grants from the province, grants from federal. The 1.3 million, as I mentioned, was part of the federal Black entrepreneurship ecosystem that they funded, but also from corporate sponsorship and donors, and just plain fundraising and selling memberships. But I show this because there's always money flowing around us, and I know I'm not an academic grant writer, but I do consider myself a grant hunter. So wherever money is flowing, I want to position ourselves in front of that flow of money. So that brings us to today, because there's been talk of the Social Finance Fund since 2018. And out of the Social Finance Fund, so it was created to support social enterprises with amplifying their operations by taking on investment from the government. But what they found is the social enterprises currently in Canada weren't ready to take on hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of investment. So they created the Investment Readiness Program. And that was a grant program that initially carved out $50 million to support social enterprises that are operational, and even those like nonprofits that are thinking about starting a social enterprise. They could get grants to do their feasibility study. They could get grants to operate and get the expertise into the organization to help them structure their social enterprise properly. So now they've done 2 cycles of the Investment Readiness Program, IRP for short. So $100 million has flowed through this program. And through my research, we've been able to see that only 4% of Black businesses have been able to get the funding. And when I say 4% of Black businesses, that actually is a bit lower because the 4% includes Black-run nonprofits. So if we're looking at for-profit social enterprises that this fund is supposed to support, less than 4% out of the 100 million is actually going to Black businesses. So now, after the first cycle, Acbn, we did get funding to start our social enterprise, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But through the second cycle, we actually became an Investment Readiness Program partner. So thanks to SETC, we were able to put in our application because we wanted to get more of this information to Black entrepreneurs. And even still, the current numbers are showing less than 4% is going to Black businesses and Black-run organizations. So what to do about this? Because the next round of funding is the Social Finance Fund. And it's a bit confusing. So this is where I'm totally okay to slow down. And if anybody has questions, I'll answer it to the best of my ability. But to give an overview, the initial Social Finance Fund that I talked about, and they carved out the grant programs. Now the grants are done. So they haven't renewed the Investment Readiness Program. So those 2 cycles of $50 million each, grant program is now being closed out. The Social Finance Fund is an investment, it's the investment phase of this whole program. So they've committed $700 million, but the wholesalers that are gonna take in that money from ESDC, they have to match it. And I have to check to make sure if it's 1-to-1. So if they get, let's say the 700 million, they also have to put 700 million, but I have seen criteria where it's at 2-to-1. So it actually could be $2.1 billion worth of funding. So right now, let's use 1.4 billion is being funneled into the Social Finance Fund. So now these wholesalers are gonna have this pool of money, and they're gonna select industries that are gonna be the organizations that take the investment from the wholesaler and now invest it into the social enterprises. So that can be an SPO, which is a social purpose organization. So typically those are nonprofits that are running income generating activities, and can be social enterprises that are for profit, that have community, a positive community impact. So they're operating as a social enterprise. So I do want to zoom in on this. Oh, it actually, did I cover all those areas? So
Can we check-in?
Yeah.
There was a lot of levels there, a lot of things, and even me involved in it. It was still kind of great. So I just want to make sure everyone's going to like understand. And if there's things that's not clear, please feel free to ask the question for clarity. Actually, unless you're anybody can hear me. Can you guys hear my question through Ryan's computer? If not, Ryan, just reiterate.
Yeah, so Pharaoh was saying if we're kind of slowing down to make sure if anybody had questions about this section before we go on. I would say this slide and the next slide are the 2 most important ones, because it's talking about the money that's about to flow. and how we should position ourselves to actually get access to it. So happy to, in case there's any questions right now.
Well, I hear you talk a lot about the Black Entrepreneurship Program, but maybe I'm a little bit ahead of my time. I'm here because I'm interested in hearing what you can offer to nonprofit organization like UNIA.
Right.
I don't know if that will come up later in your presentation.
Actually,
we
that's for now. Yeah.
Okay.
Because when I talk about the intermediaries, so the intermediaries, there's two paths that the UNIA could take. There's one where it becomes an organization that gets a pool of funds, and then you would decide who you invest in, and you would take administrative costs. Or you could be running a social enterprise and be able to get investment. So Acbn, we're positioning ourselves as the intermediary to say, we'll take an investment of funds, and then we're going to decide which organizations that we're funding. So that's where I would encourage, because that way you have better decision-making to who gets the money. If we don't become intermediaries, then whoever is chosen, we pretty much have to build a relationship with them. And I'll tell you, that's the reason why the percentage is so low of Black organizations getting funding, because the intermediaries don't have strong relationships with the Black community. So now they're getting $50, $100 million, and we have to figure out how to pretty much get on their radar, because they already have organizations that they work with. And we could see that in the results of who got funded. Typically, the ones that got funded were organizations that had already either gotten funding from them or there's close ties. So this is where I think we can position ourselves as intermediaries.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And there's also something Mervin just mentioned, and I think maybe it goes back a step, because UNIA, from what I know, is a nonprofit organization.
Right.
So one of their functions is the rental of their halls, which would
Right.
technically make them a social enterprise.
Yes.
Because they generate revenue, right? But I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that or aware of that model, or whether you guys be benefiting from those things. But from what I know, UNIA, that's one of their attributes, so they should be able to qualify as social enterprise as well.
100%. And if we're looking at experience and longevity, you'd probably be like the longest running organization out of all the ones I know. Yes.
I mean, and your presentation is based on Marcus Garvey theory,
Yes.
where he asked Black people to own their own businesses.
Yes.
That was what he was all about. He felt, I mean, a lot of people misunderstood when he talked about the Back to Africa movement. The Back to Africa movement wasn't to pack a suitcase and go to Africa, but to make Africa independent, to make Africa a nation of its own.
Yes,
I was just gonna ask, can people on Zoom hear us in the room? Because if not, then you could mute when they speak, and I'll mute them.
Okay. When Mervin was talking, was everyone able to hear him? If you want to unmute yourself and just say yes or no.
I'm gonna assume no.
Oh, are you hearing me? That's like,
I know, right?
you gotta check that.
Let me check the chat. Chatting. Okay, I just want to make sure people are hearing. Can you name a few of the past intermediaries? Okay, so I'm not sure if you're actually hearing us in the room when we speak.
Okay.
Yeah, are people hearing you speak? Because you're asking questions and they don't respond. Oh, okay.
Is it delayed?
Loud and clear. There's just a bit of a delay.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
And so sorry, yeah, if you wanted to finish your point, you were talking about.
You your side, I'll leave.
Well, that was good. That what you just presented is what UNIA based everything around.
Yes.
The Right Honorable Marcus Garvey. And he felt that Black should own their own business.
Yes.
And in order for us to move on in this world, that's what needs to happen. We cannot continue to depend on other handouts. We have to do our own. I mean, and he based all his teachings on entrepreneurship. He started the steamship line.
Well, even before that, the printing, the newspapers
Printing of
that
the
he
newspaper.
created. Yeah,
I mean,
the dry
that is
cleaners.
what- So I'm just connecting with you because I'm from UNIA. I believe in Marcus Garvey,
Yes.
and it connects.
And this is where, because they create language for things that we already do. So the term social enterprise, like you're saying, was from the 20s that Garvey was preaching this. So now that they've given a name to it and they've put funding towards it, it misses those that were already doing it just because we didn't know the definitions. So I wish I had actually knew more earlier so that we could have got ahead of, as soon as this came out. I mean, Victor tried his best to say, this thing is coming, learn about it. But it's taken me a few years to say, how do we actually position ourselves? UNIA should be leading these conversations, especially in the Black community. Now I feel like we're in position to put you there, to say, this is an intermediary that already understands social enterprise in our space. They should be the ones deciding, at least holding funds and deciding things that happen.
And I agree with you, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here. And I thank my brother here for inviting me.
Right.
Everybody knows his name already, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's so that people could understand where we're coming from. People could
Right.
understand that they need to join and make our organization great.
Right.
We have too many small bits and pieces, and we're not coming together and being a force to here. And one of the reasons why I'm here and I'm president is not because I want to be president, but I want to make certain that the community understand about UNIA.
Yes.
And they need to join and how they could help us move forward. Our motto for the year is moving forward.
Right.
We have 2 questions that
Sure.
came for Tanya Challenger. Can you name a few of the past intermediaries?
Hi, Tanya.
And do you
Yes.
know what criteria it takes to be an intermediary?
So the current intermediaries that were used for the investment readiness program were Chantier, the Community Foundations of Canada. There was the National Association of Friendship Centers, and they focused on Indigenous, and the Canadian Women's Foundation. So those were the intermediaries that decided and created the criteria for the $100 million that was part of the investment readiness program. And sorry, FFBC as well. So the Foundation for Black Communities, in the last cycle, they worked alongside the Community Foundations of Canada, and they they created a criteria for Black focused organizations. So now those were the intermediaries for the grant program. The intermediaries that I'm talking about here that are going to work with the wholesalers that are taking in the 700 million from the government has not been created. So these wholesalers, and I don't even know if they've officially announced them, but they're going to create the criteria to become the intermediaries. And I know Victor was trying to figure out if a Black entity could be a wholesaler, which again would have made this whole process a bit smoother, but we weren't able to get a Black entity as the wholesaler. So now that that ship has sailed, they're going to announce who the wholesalers are. We need to position ourselves as intermediaries, but at present, there isn't criteria for what they're looking for. But no matter what they're looking for, as Mervyn, you mentioned, if we collaborate and create a collective unit, that will make a good showing for whatever the criteria is. So these conversations is to prepare ourselves so that things don't happen and then we're trying to figure out what to do. Because what I saw, and all of the applications in the previous cycle were from individual organizations, individual businesses, and 4% success rate. So I'm proposing we do something different, similar to what you're saying, Maria. Create a collective body that now applies together. What that will look like, I don't know yet, but we have to be willing to at least think that this is a good idea to work together. And then we can design working together. And again, getting guidance from those that have been through it is gonna help us figure this out. So I promise you, I'm not here like saying I have the answer for this yet, but I know collaboration will have a higher percentage of success than what we tried with just individual applications. And yeah, so before I shift to the next one, I wanted to check. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a question.
Mhm.
Individual applications to who? So
Mm.
who are we trying to convince?
Right. So before,
For those wondering, that's Dwight Best from Action.
Yes.
yeah, so before it was those 5 intermediaries, like community foundations, Canada Women Foundation. So none of us had a collective application that went into those. It was all just individual. And we saw only 4% got funding. So now the wholesalers, and they haven't announced who the wholesalers are, those are who is going to create the criteria. So we have to create our own joint application to apply to them.
To become wholesalers?
To become intermediaries. So you see how those 5 organizations only gave it to 4%?
Right.
We can be in the place of those people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, and again, it's a position that we weren't in before. So this is where if we try to just apply as one organization, it'll be difficult. But if we apply as a group, I think it'll increase our chances. And was there questions on the chat just before? No? And it just kind of increases the size so you can see it a bit better. So to walk you through, so ESDC is the Employment and Social Development Division of the government. They're the ones that are rolling out $700 million into the Social Finance Fund. The wholesaler is going to receive that money and also match it. So there's about $1.4 billion in this pool of funds. The wholesalers are now going to invest into intermediaries. So they're going to expect a 3% return approximately. I mean, they threw out numbers, but think at minimum, the intermediaries have to pay back that money, let's say at minimum 3%. So the intermediaries now, they're going to create criteria to invest into the businesses or organizations. Those businesses or organizations, those are investments, so they're not grants. So the grant program that has passed, there will be different types of investments. I've heard some creative stuff, but it will be monies that have to be paid back at a rate of return that allows the intermediary to repay back the wholesaler. So this, like, and actually it shows here. So the different types of investment that you might see are like straight debt type investments, equity investments. There could be a guarantees type of investment, revenue sharing agreements, and they put et cetera because the intermediaries can decide how they want to invest into the businesses. So this is where if we have better structures of investment that we can design or that already exist that we can use, we'd be able to use that criteria instead of being beholden to, let's say if RBC Bank becomes an intermediary, we know the type of lending that they do. So it'll be difficult. So this is just to show you the flow of money. And now, so we don't know how much each intermediary is going to get. And then we don't know how much each intermediary is going to give. So out of the 1.4 billion, if we position ourselves as intermediaries, then we can dictate how that money flows.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I just make sure I understand the big picture. So then the goal to have one intermediary that represents the community, or to have multiple intermediaries?
I would say multiple. I know like FFBC was an intermediary in the last round, so I would assume they would put in their name in the hat. FACE, they're positioned as a container for funds for the Black community. I'm sure they'll put their name in the hat. Dream Legacy Foundation, BBPA, like entities that currently exist will, I would say, vie to become an intermediary, and hopefully they will select more than one.
Okay.
But beyond those, like, so for example, Acbn, we're only 5 years old. I wouldn't encourage us to apply to be an intermediary by ourselves. So this is where, okay, we're working with OFC, we can strengthen our application. How many more other organizations could we come together and say, as a block, we know that we can be an intermediary because we service think it's 15,000 Black entrepreneurs across those two regions. Not many other organizations can say that collectively, and definitely not on their own. So I'm hoping that they pick multiple, but yeah, at minimum, we want to put in a joint application.
And two more quick questions.
Yeah.
One was, are the intermediaries national or regional? Like, is it like, so let's say you and I were partners, and we're in Quebec and Ontario. Does that?
I don't think there's a criteria that says it has to be one or the other.
Okay.
The application would just say either you're a national organization and you represent all of Canada, or we're going to represent a specific region. So you should be able to be regional unless the wholesalers come, because that would be kind of redundant to how social enterprise works.
Right.
Like if only a national organization can fund everybody, you're not going to get it to the actual community. So
that's it. Yeah. And the other thing was, and the intermediaries, they have a responsibility, like you're saying, they have to return paid funds back with we're saying about 3%.
I would say minimum 3% back to the wholesalers.
Okay, so that's something also, just as you said, it's an important thing to keep in mind, so that the goal is to make this money make money and pay back.
Right.
Instead, and ensure everybody that we've allocated funds to can also have the capacity to do so. Cool.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And so I do want to pause there and just check if there's any questions, because I was going to go into a couple examples of social enterprises that Acbn is working on. And then I think that was it. So one piece was we are working on a payments processing platform. So this is one of our social enterprises that, as we work with people that sell products, helping them to actually transact so that they're not paying fees to Square or Stripe. We actually are able to eliminate those fees by having our own processing service. The second one is our own marketing agency. So we got funded through the investment readiness program, the grant section, to create our own social enterprise. And we created this marketing agency. And this has now become from, I think we were at like 5% of our revenue was from sales. Now it's up to 25% because of this marketing agency. And we're expecting to get to 75% so that we're not so reliant on grants. We're actually reliant on the work that we're doing with this agency. So as I wrap up, it's to now the ask of those that are here and online and that are going to be watching this in the replay. One, please do research the Social Finance Fund. I do my best to dissect information and then share it. But the more you become versed in how they're structuring this fund and how they're going to roll it out, the better it'll be, because you'll be able to share as well. Also, if you have been trying to apply for the investment readiness program, and even as you're learning about the Social Finance Fund right now, share with Pharaoh and the team your experience thus far. We want to understand what your journey has been like. One, if you did put in an application, if you got funded, and then how you felt the process was. And then, as well, I want to pitch to Pharaoh, we should put together a petition so that we can support a joint bid for us and any other organizations that want to join to become intermediaries. And that petition of community support will be able to strengthen the application so we can actually control, by being an intermediary, where the funds go. All right, so let me check, make sure that was, yes. So I appreciate you taking the time. As I said, this isn't the presentation of what is to be done. It's a presentation to open the floor and really start to collaborate. Knowing that this money is going to flow, we have to position ourselves as best we can in front of that flow of money so that we can actually control the narrative. And that's one piece that I loved about Garvey, is that he had the media. He controlled the narrative. And that's what I think we lost. So I'd love to start bringing that back. But yeah, thank you so much.
So I have, thank you, Ryan, I appreciate you. So I think what's really cool about this is a lot of times we hear about these things after the fact. So now we're finally in a position where we're finding out about the information in time to prepare and adjust accordingly. And and if if it doesn't end up that we miss opportunity, at least you know that we were around. We had this we had something to discuss. I think like you had said, the call to action in terms of community organization for collaborative opportunities. I think that is something that we should explore. A lot of the organizations here are I think English-based organizations, if I'm not mistaken. So I think there's another opportunity there as well, with what I have seen and experienced in terms of being English in Quebec and Black. We serve as a double minority. There's a huge value in us working together. For lack of a better term, like we're kind of losing times here, and if we were to find if we needed a common a reason to get together, the fact that we are double minorities here in Quebec, I think that is a good reason for us to make the effort to collaborate and to work together. I had a quick question, and I don't know how you know about this, but it's about I think it's about the IRP. I think it's chantier controlling, because it was maybe you can educate us a little bit on that, because I know that when there was a national call except for Quebec, we couldn't apply for any funding here. And
because it had to go through chantier.
Right. And I don't know if anybody on the line is familiar with it or has gone through any kind of process, but if you could share, because I have not been able to get any kind of headway with chantier and getting access to that funding. Stop sharing. Thanks.
Sorry.
And you're getting an echo? You're getting an echo from...
Oh, yeah. I can mute while you're talking.
Yeah. Thanks. Good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Yeah. So basically, I don't know if anybody has had an opportunity to connect with Chantier or have found out anything about the IRP, but Ryan, if you could just explain just the IRP, do you like how it went throughout Canada, and then we could talk a little bit about the adversities we're dealing with in Quebec.
And that's why it was interesting how they structured it, because on all applications, as soon as they said it's coming from Quebec, okay, stop your application with CFC, which is the Community Foundations of Canada. If it was FFBC, the Foundation for Black Communities, they would say stop your application and you have to go through Chantier. So same, I don't have any relationship with Chantier, so I wouldn't even know who to reach out to ask. But it was also difficult because then it kind of told people to go away. So we didn't really get the track to see, but who actually was going to apply from the Quebec province, and then see if they actually, and how the process was. So that, yeah, I think we could have did better to see what the flow was for people applying there, because even we didn't do info sessions about it. I guess we were waiting to see if Chantier was going to do info sessions about it, and I didn't see any. So
they stopped adopting has passed now, right? Like the funding.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys really want to add to it?
There's no sound.
I think you guys are muted. Can you unmute, please? Because we can't hear.
Got back to us a couple
Right.
to say no, and like I did follow up with them, and they said they just had so many applications. It wasn't like the most encouraging response. You know, it's like we already have like a little bit of money. Don't bother us. We're already getting too much. You know.
I wonder how much they allocated. Because I think CFC had about 20 million. So a gentleman here did apply to Chantier. He wasn't successful, and yeah, they didn't really give any feedback. And they also haven't posted who got funded, which the Community Foundations of Canada, they have posted it. I'm not a fan of the way they did. They used a map program where before they just put an Excel spreadsheet, which is a lot easier to navigate. So hopefully they'll send the spreadsheet. But the FFBC, I didn't see them post just yet, so they might be working on that. But Chantier should be at least putting up who did get the funding. That way you can compare to see, yeah.
Can you ask, are the organizations here, are you guys, the ones on Zoom, are you guys familiar with Chantier?
Yeah, Tanya, if you're saying, if I'm saying it wrong, please, I don't, just let me know. But yeah.
Shanti.
Chantier,
I just wanted
yeah.
to confirm the spelling because I'm looking it up. Is that right, Shanti?
I'm
Okay.
gonna share the link. That's why I was asking. And I was like, I'm wondering if you guys
Yeah.
know who Chantier is. That's
Yeah,
it.
we-
Chantier, mute for a second, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I that's what, oh, sorry. Yeah, I was asking just because a lot of people might not even be aware of who Chantier is, right? Or what yeah, and they're kind of like sitting on a lot of resources that should be shared with us, but historically I don't think they've ever funded any Black organization. So that's why it's super imperative for us in Quebec to really rally and to start making noise, because they really have a hold on the entire province. Okay, I'm gonna share the link here for you guys.
And that's where, if things stay the same, this new rollout of money, the exact same thing is gonna happen, because they might be in charge of Quebec again. And then if they get $200, $300 million to disperse and 0% comes to the Black community, right, we can't sit by and let stuff like that happen. So whatever we have to do to make sure that doesn't happen, that's what I feel Acbn is here to say. Let us know what we can do to make sure that we can control how funds get to our Black community.
Amazing. So as we're closing up, unless is there any more questions, concerns, comments? Okay, great. This has been a great use of our lunch hour. I'm going to share a link because we're working on, for those who, some of you guys already took it, but we put out a little survey, a little questionnaire to understand from English organizations, what are your challenges? Are you aware of some of the programs that are currently available to you? So if you guys can take a moment, if you haven't already, just to fill in the questionnaire. And if you have any other feedback, comments, questions, concerns that maybe come to you after the fact or as you're listening to this, please reach back out to the OFC. You can reach us at ofcwecare@gmail.com or at 514-651-4545. So if we have no other questions, concerns, or comments, I'll leave you guys with this 8 minutes left of your lunch hour. And I will bless and close us again, as usual, grateful to life, God, our creator, and the ancestors for creating this opportunity for us to be able to get together and to build together as a community. And I just ask that we be guided through the process and that we be supported in this process of getting access to capital to support our organizations as well as our community. Hotep, amen.
Presentation can be shared.
Definitely. Yes, good point. Thank you for reminding me, Ryan. If anybody does want a copy of the recording, just send us an email at ofcwecare@gmail.com. Just request a copy and it'll be our pleasure to share it with you.
I would like to.
Great,
So,
great. Thank you.
Definitely,
Thank
I
you.
will. Okay.
You could just send it to me. You have my call.
I definitely can.
You have my call.
Yes. All right, guys. Thank you again. Thanks for being present. And we'll definitely follow up and be in touch.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Bye. You see, we're hooking on. I'm back.